Do you often regret the words that you say to other people, the way that you react? Do you apologize, or do you just try to make it up to them? Because there's two things that we can do. Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. So I want to start with a question. Do you ever snap or shut down or say something that you really later on kind of regret, only to think later, like, what was happening for me? Why did I react that way? So here's the thing. If you're nodding your head yes, you are not crazy, right? You're definitely not alone. What we're going to be talking about in today's episode of the Terri Cole Show is emotional reactivity. And I want you to imagine it like being hijacked by your past, right? That's kind of what's happening to you. But there's good news, because you can take your power back, and that is exactly what I'm going to be teaching you in today's episode. We're going to be covering why we react, how you can spot the signs, and really the top tools that you can use to shift from reacting to responding, which of course is what we want to do. If you happen to be new to my YouTube channel, well, hello and welcome. Please introduce yourself in the comments. We are a very friendly group. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I roll out new material, which is every Tuesday and every Thursday. Thank you so much for all of your questions and your comments. This is such an active YouTube channel and has been for almost a decade. This month actually is the 10-year anniversary of the Terri Cole Show. So thanks for hanging out. To my OGs who've been here for a long time, and to my newbies, because I love all of you. So let's move it on into today's content. How to be less emotionally reactive. That is what we're going to be covering in this episode of the Terri Cole Show. So let's talk a little bit about why we react, like just so we can have a deeper understanding of ourselves. Because I think a lot of times we can be really hard on ourselves when we overreact or react rather than respond. But I want you to understand that it really is a human experience, and that so much of the time we have all these unconscious things happening that sort of kidnap us. You know, it really is something that's kind of surprising. So one of the main reasons why we react is emotional triggers or emotional activation, I like to call it. Again, triggers for me is a bit of a triggering, not to be redundant, but I feel like it's inaccurate. So I like to say emotional activation points or data points tied to past wounds, past fears, and unmet needs. So you may be more sensitive to something because of your life experience, right? If you have a mother wound, you might be a little tender. If someone says something about your mothering, you might be more tender, or you might have a reaction to that because of having a mother wound. Another thing that really plants the seeds for emotional reactivity is unresolved trauma, right, from the past. So these original injuries, these childhood experiences, and it doesn't just have to be from childhood, but a lot of them are from childhood, is the point. Or someone attempting to manipulate you, again, if you had this experience when you were younger, can really amplify your reaction to it. Where nobody likes to be manipulated, don't get me wrong. But if you had a childhood where one of your caregivers, one of your parents, was really manipulative, you will be more sensitive to it than other people. And it can go either way. You may have an amplified response, but it also can make you more vulnerable to falling in with someone who is manipulative. So what really happens when we're activated? Let's just talk about that for a little bit. When we get activated, or in the case of real trauma, when we get triggered, our nervous system gets stuck, right? We get jacked into a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. So even when the situation isn't dire, right? Because when we go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, it's because we're feeling incredibly threatened. Our nervous system feels that way. So if you look at the physical experience of that, this was something that used to keep us safe, right? You felt threatened. There was a predator coming. You could fight. You could run. You could play dead. Or fawn has been added by psychologists in the last 15 years, I'd say, or past 20 years, maybe. Peter or somebody, I forgot his name. where the fawn response is where we start to flatter someone. And this sort of comes in more around manipulative or narcissistic relationship dynamics. But either way, fight, flight, or freeze certainly is a physiological response to feeling really threatened. But it's almost a response that's appropriate for being mortally threatened. But it's like our nervous system feels like we are mortally threatened when we're really not in mortal danger. So it's a physical response on top of an emotional response. And this is where that feeling, that sense for me of being hijacked can come in. As I said at the top of this episode, where you can feel like you're being hijacked by your past because you are having a response in the present moment that is being fueled by an unresolved experience in the past. But there's something about the present moment experience that is familiar. You know, why do we have what I call repeating relationship realities? We all have a tendency to get into a relationship with the same type of person, let's say, even when we say we're not going to, or even when we say we don't want to. So why is that? Because that's a transference, but what is it doing for us? It's almost like the child within you is looking for a do-over. And so these patterns, I think as a psychotherapist, I'm always looking for and at patterns. And it's something that if you want to become sort of an armchair psychotherapist in your own life, becoming really aware of your own patterns, emotional patterns, relational patterns, behavioral patterns, all of it. Because what we do over and over is the thing that dictates the quality of our lives. Whether it's the mistakes we make over and over, we can learn from them, right? When we start to identify patterns, especially when it's patterns that we don't like, right? We get stuck in these patterns where we say, I'm going to stop dating these types of people, or I'm going to stop eating fast food, or I'm going to, whatever the thing is, I'm going to stop drinking, let's just say. And if you continue doing it, this is where we need to understand why are we reacting that way, because it's not necessarily in our best interest to do that. So we covered why we react. So, because part of the thing is, I feel like it's so easy to judge ourselves, to be so hard and be like, what is wrong with me? You have so many good reasons to be doing what you're doing. Just have faith. Your brain makes sense. It doesn't mean you can't change it. So if you want to spot the signs of reacting instead of responding, it's having misplaced or displaced anger, where you have a rotten day and then you come home and you're mean to your partner because of it, right? It's you being passive aggressive, right? It's being offended. It's saying yes when you want to say no, right? These could all be signs that you're reacting rather than responding. What does it look like when we have this reaction? And it's really a transference so much of the time that we're talking about, is we are having an out of proportion response to what actually happened. And again, I was just talking about this in my mastermind group. You may be in a situation where someone really did a douchey thing. You may still have an amplified response to it because of unresolved stuff from the past. But those two things can coexist. We're not letting the person who did the crappy thing off the hook, right? What we want to do is succinctly understand our own emotional reactions to the situations in our lives. When we react, we are not acting from choice. So why am I even doing this episode? Because I always want you to recognize and provide yourself with choices. When you're reacting, you're not choosing. You're just acting. So there's so much about this that's so important for us to slow down. Another sign to think about is, how often do you regret your words or your actions almost immediately after the interaction? Whether you send a mean text message back to someone or whether you explode at someone. If you're having a lot of regrets about your own behaviors, I mean, listen, we're human beings. We all have regrets. I said something really sort of like snippy to Vic last night, and he was like, okay, like, is everything okay? Like, why, And 2 minutes later, I was like, I'm sorry. I just was feeling frustrated, but that's not cool. And I'm sorry I said that. I was just being a jerk. And he was like, all right, relax. You have a cold. It's fine. So again, it doesn't mean as regular human beings, you're not going to sometimes snap, or you're not going to sometimes react in a way that even surprises you. But when we're doing it regularly, which I definitely was before my own emotional evolution in my own therapy when I was in my 20s, there was a lot of regret that I had. I was so defensive with people, and defensiveness can make you say mean things because when you're defensive, you're always feeling attacked by other people, even when they're not attacking you. And that was like emotional immaturity too on my part. I mean, I was in my 20s. Obviously, you live and learn, you grow up. But think about it. Those are the signs. Are you misplacing your aggression? Are you acting in a passive-aggressive way? Can you notice where your reaction to something is out of proportion to the thing? Do you often regret the words that you say to other people? The way that you react? Do you apologize, or do you just try to make it up to them? Because there's two things that we can do, right? In all areas, we can talk it out or act it out. So if you can apologize, then maybe you do. But a lot of times we do what in therapeutically we call undoing, where we just act more nice to the person. We do something mean, but instead of saying it, we just go, oh, I'm going to the kitchen. Do you need something? Like, we just go out of our way to be nice. And again, that's not the end of the world, right? If you're doing that, at least there's what you're trying to make up for what the reaction that you had that made you feel bad about. But I really do feel like at this point, you guys, in our evolution, words are just so much more effective. Like, let's really get committed to saying what it is that we need to say and owning our own behavior. And of course, we want to be in relationships with other people who do the same thing. Obviously, that is optimal. But all we can do is keep our side of the street clean, right? Which is exactly what we're talking about and why I'm talking about this in this episode. Because the less emotionally reactive you are, the more emotional intelligence you have, because the more choices you will have. You will get to make choices. So let's talk about tools. What can you do? Probably the most important thing, besides boundaries, which I'm going to talk about last, but is to slow down. Right now, take a deep breath with me. 1, 2, 3, inhale. And release. Relax your shoulders. Just slow down. At the very least, I want you to commit to pausing and breathing for at least a minute before you respond to something that has activated you. I love the idea of taking 24 hours to respond. Many of you feel like you have to respond immediately, and you don't. So we're going to breathe. Then you're going to look at your feelings. Because if we just let our feelings dictate our actions, we are not growing our emotional intelligence in any way. So what is the feeling? What just happened? Identify what was activating about that situation for you. And that's going to take a minute. Write it down in a journal. What was the feeling? Maybe, let's just say the feeling was, if I was talking about the situation with Vic last night, I was feeling resentful about something so stupid. I don't think I'm even too embarrassed to even say what it was. But it was about picking something that we were going to watch while we were having dinner. And it's like he doesn't even know how to turn on the TV, right? Because this guy never watches television. So he only watches when he's with me, because he's mostly in a studio drawing. Anyway, it's such a stupid story. Maybe I should even have my editors cut it out. But the point is, if I were to identify, I was feeling put out. Like, why do I always have to decide what we watch when he says he doesn't care? If it was feeling decision fatigue, like, I'm writing this book, I'm friggin' exhausted, I don't care what we watch either. Maybe we shouldn't watch anything. Anyway, so I was feeling put upon. What that would have brought me to is that it really wasn't about me deciding that we would watch The Rest is History, which is basically the only thing we watch together, which is a YouTube channel that my husband's obsessed with. It wasn't that. It's when you're writing a book, even though it takes a village, and I always say it, you feel alone. And that because I've been in the middle of writing this book for a long time, I feel alone. And so that's really what it was about. And I could have gotten myself, which I did right now with you guys in real time, to the heart of what was actually happening for me, as opposed to saying like a bitchy thing that it didn't even mean. And there's no satisfaction, especially being mean to my husband, because he's just no. He's just no. He does not deserve that one bit. The most mellow Pisces you're ever going to meet. Like, that dude deserves nothing but sunshine from me. You know what I mean? Anyway, well, long way around the barn. So the top tools to shift: we are pausing, we are breathing, we are naming, and we are the feeling, and we are identifying the activation point, or the trigger, if you want to call it that. And then we're going to practice self-soothing. It's so important. Go for a walk, hug a tree, step away before re-engaging, and journal. Because part of the self-soothing is you identifying what's really going on, because we don't want to feel like we've been hijacked by our feelings. It doesn't feel good. The people in our life are confused, but hey, so are we sometimes about what the hell was that about. When your feelings feel like they're running you over like a freight train, that's when we know we have to slow down. Last thing I want to talk about quickly is boundaries. This is a really important aspect of not being emotionally reactive, because when we protect our time, our energy, our space, when we are not enmeshed in our relationships, where we know where we end and others begin, there is more space. There isn't the constriction and the being compelled to react in the same way. So setting and enforcing clear boundaries to protect your energy is key to being way less emotionally reactive. And remember, boundaries are not blocks. Boundaries are not walls. They are the bridges to deeper, healthier, happier relationships. To sum it up, reacting less in your life creates more peace, more clarity, more sovereignty, right? Because you feel like you're in control of yourself, and more self-respect because you don't have as many regrets. Every pause that you take creates space for choices instead of regret, which the less we can regret shit, the better. And really responding instead of reacting, getting yourself in that position. And if you do all the things I talked about in today's episode, you will. It is truly a radical act of self-love, because then you can count on you to act in a way that represents you properly, right? That you can count on you to act in a way that you are proud of. So I wrote this down for you, so don't worry. You can just go get the guide, terricole.com/guide. Everything you need is going to be in there. I want to hear from you. Are you emotionally reactive? And did what I shared with you in this episode help you at all? Are you going to try any of the things that I shared? That's what I want to know. I also hope that you guys have the most amazing week. And as always, take care of you.